All righty, thank you guys. Can I answer any questions about change of use or any of the stuff on this? Did I teach you guys something new today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to bore you, but my goal was I wanted you to feel like at the end of this presentation that you actually understood some of the numbers that might go into a project like this, like roughly how much things might cost per unit. So yeah, I'll stop talking now. What questions can I answer for you guys?
I did have a small question. Like you said, it took 3 days to remodel each unit, but
Yes,
you had
ma'am.
to have the circuits put in.
Correct.
You had to have, so that was extra. So
Yes.
really it took maybe what, 2 weeks per unit total to get everything done?
Yeah, 3 days from the time we were ready to run.
Okay.
Okay, so 3 days by the time I could send my guys into a unit and say,
Paint it, floor
let
it.
loose. Yeah, so I bought this in like November 2021, which means we really didn't get going until January because of the holidays and blah, blah, blah. I think that we were done by September. So it took 9 months about start to finish. It took us about 100 days from the time we were ready to run. So the rest of that was, the other 6 months. We're waiting on opening the road, fire suppression company, change of use, permits, all that stuff. Yeah. But the nice part is like from the time we moved out there to live in it, we were only there about 100 days. But great catch. Absolutely. Any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Belardo.
How do you make up for like, if you're not monitoring each one of these units, so how does that work out in terms of the impact on your ROI? You're going to be covering all those expenses.
So are you talking about like utility cost and stuff? Yeah, you have to know that if you go into these, and anytime there's an all bills paid property, and I hate all bills paid property, I just feel like you get an especially stupid tenant. Like Section A, all bills paid. Like for example, I've had people running their AC at freezing, and I go say, hey, why is your AC running at its lowest setting? You got the front door open. And it goes, well, my apartment's too cold. So I'm trying to let the hot air in. You know what I mean? And I'm not even going to lie to you, that happens. You just have to know that your utilities are going to be expensive. So there's 3 things that I do to mitigate. One, I'm actually about to test for the first time, but I'm kind of excited about it. I'll go ahead and tell you about that now. There are sub-metering companies in America. I'm about to do 40 units. The bid for the materials and the tech is about $5,300. So I think that's, I don't know, do the math, $130 a unit, something like that. But what they will do is they can either clamp these readers onto your water line where it comes into each unit, and they can read it and bill the tenants individually for their water uses based on their actual usage. Or if there's not an easy way like on my units that I'm doing it, my lines come in and then they run up. And so I can't tell which stage along the way is using which water above. So what they can do though on all their properties, they have the data to say on average, cold water usage is 60% of water usage and hot water usage is 40%. So they'll clamp these readers onto the hot water outline, and they'll take whatever that usage is for each unit and they'll apply that formula and say this should be 40% of the water usage, and they'll extrapolate with what the bill says they can get within 5%. So that's one thing. I'm going to experiment. Jury's out. I'll let you know how it goes. But solar panels, very effective on properties like this. Solar is always really expensive unless you do it the only way that works, which means you have your own study done, for $500 for what you need on the load. You order the panels directly from the manufacturer. You pay a general contractor to hook them, or to put them on the roof, and you pay an electrical contractor to connect them. When we do that, we save upwards of 50% on the cost of installing solar. And only when you do that do you get a positive ROI. So we were able to, with I think 90 solar panels, drop our electric bill from a $2,200 a month to about a $600 a month. And those solar panels cost me, I think, $52,000. So, what is that? $1,800 or $1,600 or something. I'm tired a month. So I'm getting my money back in like three or 4 years. I should be just about getting my money back now. But also you get pretty big rebates for solar, right? When you buy from a solar company, it doesn't do you a damn thing because they just raise the price, so they take the rebate from you. But when you're buying them at a 50% discount, the rebate's actually pretty significant. And so I don't know exactly how much that saved me because I don't remember, but I think it was 35% rebate. So maybe I get my money back in 3 years instead of 4. And then finally, the last thing that we do is I don't allow these people to have AC units, and it's kind of hard to hide them because they've got to be in your window. So I have my people check, and if they want to rent one, we will charge them a $100 install fee to make sure that they're not going to break my window when they install it. We'll go install it, and I charge them $50 a month to have that AC in there. So that's what I do. Great question, Dr. Blatter. Any other questions?
What kind of flooring are you using? I've got some, I started breaking into those low end stuff, and I just, even the floors I've used in my single families, they're tearing them up. So what are you using in your floors, and how long are you expecting your floors to last?
Yeah. Flooring has kind of become like paint for me. I used to have a religion of cheap paint, cheap flooring because tenants would tear it up. And now I go world's most expensive paint and pretty expensive flooring, and I've been happier. So on flooring, I won't do anything less than a 12 mil wear layer on the vinyl plank. A lot of times I'll do 20, but I can get 12 mil for $1.65 a square foot. It's a pretty thick product. It's been holding up pretty well. And I like the lighter flooring colors. People say they don't like the lighter flooring colors, but the reason I like the lighter flooring color is because if they drag a piece of furniture through the floor, you take just one of those wood color pens and hickory and you can't see it anymore. You know what I mean? And nobody's going to gouge it unless they're intentionally doing it. Nobody's going to gouge that much of plastic, right? But on the darker flooring, that core base really shows when somebody scrapes through it. So that's what I'm doing. Some people, I have been tempted to play with the glue down flooring just because I like the Rasa flooring pitch of don't do anything, we'll come install it for like $1.20 a square foot or whatever. I just have never had an apartment complex that had flat floors.
Yeah.
And I hate how it looks when I'm looking at a wavy floor with that glue down crap. But I do love that a piece gets messed up and I take a heat gun to it and pull it up. I haven't done it. So I haven't had bad luck though with the thicker stuff. That cheap stuff, the 6 mil where it's like that thick for $1.35. Every time I install that, the corners are chipped. Half the time it's chipped because my guys installed it, that way.
So is it the lock? That's the snap lock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's honestly pretty durable.
It's like all rubber all the way through.
Yeah.
So you're doing flooring on everything?
I am personally.
With
Yeah.
underlayment?
Yeah, it's got underlayment attached. I don't lay additional underlayment. That being said, I do spend a little bit of extra money, and I'll self-level bad spots in the apartment. I won't just go over a totally wavy floor. But you got to be careful. You can use $1,000 of self-leveler pretty easily in an apartment that's going to get you $700 a month. So just got to be a little bit careful. Yes, sir.
Is the tax write-off on that like immediate versus, let's say, tile, which you cannot do that, though, you can't write it off that first year? Is that the same product?
Yeah,
Write
it's,
off within the first year? Appreciate it.
everything depends on whether the IRS is going to audit you or not. The proper answer is you should not be writing anything off in a renovation, really. Like almost all of that by the book is technically a capital improvement. It should be depreciated. If you are going to repair a piece of flooring because a tenant scraped through it, you expense that day one. If you're going to replace the entire floor, you should be registering it as a capital improvement and depreciating it. If you replace a section of shingles on the roof, that's a write-off. If you replace the roof, it's a capital improvement. It's generally a repair versus replace. But look, if I asked a group of real estate investors how many of them were properly expensing, even I would have to put my hand down. Nobody's doing it, right? You do it how you need it. Or you do it how your accountant's willing to, if you even tell them the truth. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like if you get audited, you're just paying the fines anyways. Right? I'm sorry, that's a bad answer. The technically correct answer is you should not be expensing it. You should be depreciating it. And if you wanted to take it off day one, hopefully Trump brings this back. They've been filtering out. But you go do your renovation, and you want to take it all year one, you do a cost segregation study, and you do 100% depreciation on it year one. I think this year it's 40% in 2025?
40%.
40%, so you can take 40% of it year one. But I just have a big feeling Trump is going to bring back the cost segregation train. That's my flag. You heard it here first. Yes, sir, Octave.
Do they like show up at this property that you say you wrote, you know, that you put in new floorings here? And,
Oh, the IRS?
yeah.
No, they're going to send you a letter. You're going to send it to your tax accountant, and they're probably not going to go to your property. They're going to ask you for receipts, and you have a duty to store your receipts for 7 years. They don't have a duty to prove that, like you don't get the benefit of the doubt. This is not a criminal trial. You are guilty until you're proven innocent. You must prove that this was correct. And if your accountant is good and you're not paying H&R Block, they're going to be there with you, and they're going to say, you know, here's our records, because they should have a file with your name on it where they're storing the bulk of the stuff. But also, Octave, just accept this. You lose. I'm telling you, you lose. I have a mentor of mine that got audited for 11 years straight. They were convinced this guy was doing something. He beat their ass in federal court 3 times. They couldn't get anything. They wanted him so bad that they found one time that he issued a shareholder statement with an incorrect number on the bottom of it. And when they realized they made an error 3 weeks later, which was 6 years before they tried him, he sent out a revised statement correcting the error, and they put him in jail for 22 years for mail fraud. So, look, defend yourself, but at a certain point, you're not even fighting over enough money that it's going to be worth going to federal tax court for. And I suspect they kind of strategically audit that way. Okay, so just understand, they're going to earn their money for auditing you, and you're just going to bring some lube and pray.
The only person I ever heard that went out to the property, the guy was doing big time illegal stuff, and he went to federal prison, and he was, they're lazy.
So they were investigating him criminally, it sounds like.
They were investigating him, and he was doing some stuff, and he was basically said that there was a second house on a property that was a garage that he had the door and shutters to, and there's some stuff like that was doing. So when they came out and checked out his property, he served 20 years.
So it helps to understand the actual definition of tax evasion, okay? That's federal embezzlement. You don't take money from the Fed, which everybody did with PPP and EIDL, so good luck. But the definition of tax evasion is the failure to report 30% or more of your income. Okay? It's not a crime to wrongfully deduct all of your income. They can come in and they hit you with penalties, they can hit you with fines, they can hit you with interest. They can't throw you in jail. You have a constitutional amendment that says that you cannot be imprisoned for debt in this country. That applies to the IRS as well. That's why the rule is report everything, expense everything, right? Don't actually expense everything, but expense responsibly, but report everything.
That's why you're reporting cash sales and microwave.
Yeah, like, right. And that's not going to approach 30% of my income, but you create muscle memory for yourself. So, and things like this are risky, by the way, because if they want you, they'll 100% like pull up every time I've ever talked about, fucking the IRS, and they'll play it back right in front of me. Well, you can talk shit if your books are right? I mean, that's the thing. You get to sit up here and talk crap for 3 hours if you're secure. If you're not secure, you kind of have to say yes, sir. So, I don't know.
Only bought that microwave from the government, whoever government buys their microwave for $200.
Yeah, no kidding.
So Dakota, you made a comment about the window units, and I think I bought 100 last year.
Mm.
You know, and is that, I don't see how most of my properties are C-class. They look like B inside, but they're C-class.
Mhm.
I don't think I could rent them if I didn't provide AC.
But you're not including the utilities, are you?
Some of them water. Yeah, departments, yes.
Yeah, so that's the difference. If you're not paying the utilities, leave it installed all year long. Why even incur the hassle of uninstalling and reinstalling? The only reason you would do that is to make sure that they're not running their ACs during the winter and other crap.
Although I think we have a different setup here because I believe the latest changes to the Landlord and Tenant Act require us to provide air conditioning now. So it doesn't matter whether you can't do the same thing because you have to have it there anyway. So it kind of needs.
Is that confirmed?
We've been talking about it.
Is that actually in the new Landlord Tenant Act?
Yeah.
Way earlier in 2024.
I'll have to go research that.
Last I heard, they were talking about it, and then didn't know they signed off on it. They were talking about it, but I didn't know they finished it out.
I'll go research that.
But I think we're required to now. Again, I'm telling you what Robert told me. I'm not 100% sure Robert is quite as plugged in as he used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go research that. Thanks for putting that on my radar. Yes, sir.
I'm going to throw this out there. A buddy of mine in Rotary is a lobbyist here in the state, and he tracks landlord law. He's a landlord. So if you have something that pops up that you're curious about, let me know, and I'll look into it, have him look into it, and see kind of what the backstory is with it. A lot of the stuff, because we're such a conservative legislature, a lot of the things that are proposed never make it. But that's not a good reason to ignore it and assume it'll go away.
Yeah, I said that because Robert said last year when we were talking, when he was in town, that as of this date.
Yeah, I'm going to research it.
Legally.
I'm going to research it, and when I get home, I'll put it in the Breakfast Club. I'll put the link to it because I would like to know. But there's other things we can do.
Yeah, I was just saying we can no longer keep it out and then add it for a fee.
Interesting.
If that is in fact true.
Yeah, that would be
Are you doing this in
interesting.
Oklahoma right now?
No,
Oh.
I haven't done a conversion project here. I want to piggyback on something Alan said, and this is maybe just a note to everybody. I've done business in a lot of states. I've lived in a lot of states. Oklahoma has some of the friendliest, most trustworthy investors, I think maybe the most of any state that I've lived in. But where this investor caste really falls short repeatedly in this state is we are so lax and uninvolved in our policy. Probably the worst of anywhere I've lived. Like like the not in my backyard crowd gets to run supreme. They get whatever they want in this city because investors don't show up. We don't pay lobbyists. We don't get involved with the property management advocates. We don't get involved in any national landlord groups. And you guys don't understand how much it's hurting you. You know, like how the city does things, taking 3 years or 3 weeks to get to your electrical inspection? You know that's not allowed? It's literally not allowed. You know that if I call the city and say, hey, I want a building inspector to meet me at this property before I buy it to walk through it with me, and they say, no, we can't do it. Do you know that's not allowed? But do you guys do anything about it? Yeah, so you guys let the city walk all over you. Let the state walk all over you. You don't defend your rights. It's written clear as day in the IBC what they have to provide you, and they don't. And so, Alan, I'm glad that you're out there with your friend fighting the fight for us because we all need to be doing that. In fact, this is a perfect example. The city of Oklahoma City, as far as I'm aware, for the first time in the 4 years that I've lived here, decided to do something that actually makes some fucking common sense. And they came to present about how in a large swath of the city, they want to make it legal by right to add additional dwelling units in the backyard. This is very common sense. This is an absolute approval, okay? The people that actually pay and are on welfare are having to live further and further away from where they work and spend more and more on gas, accidents, breakdowns, and insurance because we don't have any workforce housing. which is really concerning when we're like the third most affordable state in the whole dang country, okay? And the only people that went to that meeting besides me and Alan were like 60 retired people that don't have jobs that want to tell you what to do with your property because you're too lazy to show up. Do you guys believe in private property rights in this room? Well, if you're not willing to carve out an evening to go advocate for it, you don't get to say yes to me. I'm sorry, you're wrong. So they're having a public comment on January 23rd at 1:30 p.m. And if you guys do not show up, that ordinance will likely not pass. So I'm going to challenge you guys in this room to get more involved for the future of your investments and your city, and go actually speak out for common sense policy.
Where is that?
That's at City Hall, 1:30 p.m., January 23rd. And if you just Google that, you can Google like Oklahoma City public comment or whatever, and it'll have a calendar that shows the Planning Commission meeting there on January and where it is.
That's for the ADU approval.
Yes. Yes. This is very important. Think about this. How many like houses have you seen from 10th Street to like 23rd Street? And the swath is much bigger than that. But just think about those two streets where there are boarded up homes that have been reclaimed by the homeless, just living in there. And you see it on a wholesale list and you think, oh man, that looks pretty good. Let me go take a look at that. And by the time you walk through it, you realize, man, I couldn't take this property for free and make a profit.
Yep.
How many times have you seen that? But what if you could build an ADU without having to spend $10,000, $15,000 on a planned unit development? All of a sudden, you can buy these properties that are literally making it so your wives can't walk their dog at night, and you can actually fix them up and make a profit on it. And they've got provisions where you don't even need to add on-site parking. This is a very good policy. And it's not just like pro real estate investor. Like, I'm looking at this from the perspective that I genuinely feel like my wife cannot walk down the streets at night in these areas because the homeless own our streets. And I'm sick and tired of us talking about how we care and how great we are as a state and how progressive we are, and then we don't show up. Your neighbor should not be able to tell you you can't do something on your own property without paying your property taxes. End of story. The city should be able to tell you even less. Sorry. Okay, I hope I see you guys there. Yes, sir.
What do you recommend, that you should review to prepare to attend a meeting like that?
Well, when you hear me say that, ADUs, what problem flashes through your head?
Parking.
Parking? Okay, so that's something to review. How many cars does somebody that lives in a studio apartment normally have? One. Okay, so is there ample on-street parking available? Are the roads larger than 26 feet? Because 26 feet is generally the requirement where you can park on the street, where it's safe to park on the street. And I will tell you that most of the roads are above 26 square feet. Like Oklahoma City has done a good job on that. You know, people will say, what's it going to do to property values? You know, people are worried that it's actually going to drop property values by somehow turning neighborhoods into a renter class. There's no data to support that it drops property values. And in fact,
Especially because it makes the homes more affordable because somebody can use the ADU income.
yeah. No, and I think that is one of the biggest components of why this is common sense. How many people's insurance have gone up like 60% over the last 4 years?
Or more.
Okay, so can we have a moment of compassion for the 70-year-old living in their home that did everything right and paid off their home and has had their property taxes increased by 5% a year and their insurance increased by 60% over the last 4 years and has to sell their home because they're getting taxed and insured out of their own home? What if they could take a loan against their paid-off house for $65,000 and drop a boxable in the backyard that's going to bring them $700 a month? Would that help?
These are just rentals, they're the mother-in-law houses,
100%. Yeah, they're for your grown children. They're for your aging mother. There is no downside to this other than somebody who's owned their house where it is 40 years decides that they don't want to look over and see somebody that actually has to work for a living. Like I'm convinced. These people that are out there screaming, not my backyard, they're not poor.
Except it's not their backyard they're worried about, your backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, freaking ridiculous. And they kept saying that.
Their backyard, they don't have to worry about it because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna put it in their backyard.
They're like, but what if I don't like what it looks like? This is what they're asking the planning staff, and I'm like, oh, I've got something for that. Don't look at it.
What's
Yeah,
it
build a
like,
higher
Dakota?
fence, plant a tree.
Is it just a vote, or what's it like when you go in there? Do we have a say when we go in
You,
there? or-
no, the city council gets to vote. You get to make public comments, so they'll give everybody the opportunity that wants to come talk to come talk. You come talk a few things you think is good, but really what you're there to do is you are there to give the city council members the courage to do something that is common sense. When the only people that show up say bad things, and there's nobody that shows up and says good things, the city council is supposed to take a vote with only people saying nay in the room. What do you think they're going to vote? Public officials consistently do what makes their lives easier.
That's gonna be in the council room at 1:30?
I believe so. I'm going to show up a little bit early just so I can make sure I find my way, but yes.
Yeah, if you could put that out on the Breakfast Club and stuff too.
Yeah, I certainly will.
Put it out.
Good
I'll
idea.
put it in the groups and I'll put a meetup. I'll make it into a meetup too. We'll have like a couple thousand people show up maybe.
You know what's
I'll
interesting
invite a couple thousand people, see if somebody shows up.
is I roasted these people. I roasted these old people, and I don't know if you guys saw, but they put a nice little letter on my card.
I read it. Like parking. The roads are really flooded with cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of ridiculous. But they want, at the core of it is somebody thinks that they should be able to take your agency away. And when I spoke out, there were 6 planning staff there. Each one of them made a point to come shake my hand and tell me, like, people like you don't come to the meetings. Like, please come to the meetings. And that shocked me because for 4 years I loved to stand up here and talk shit on the city of Oklahoma City. And then it turns out there's actually at least some people in the city that are trying to do things that make sense. And we're not giving them the ammunition to do it. Now, I don't know about you guys. I personally, I like to complain. Like, I like to talk about things. But there's a rule. Like, I don't get to complain if I'm not doing my part to fix it. So I'm going to say my piece. If I lose, everybody's going to hear me complain about it for the next year. That's your reward for showing up.
That's it.
It's a win-win for you. You either win or you get to complain. No losing. Yes, sir.
You don't have to be political to get to know who your city councilman or councilwoman is and talk to them. I happen to go to church with mine. I've known him for a long time. That's the low-hanging fruit in political activism. That's the easy way to go. Get to know your city councilman. They take phone calls. They're happy to meet with you and talk to you. And they don't know what's going on until we tell them what's going on. They do studies. They got all kinds of stuff going on with the mayor and this and that. But like the AC or ADUs, Brad Carter, my city councilman, knows because he's also an investor. But not all of them do. And so it's easy, and you vote for them, so they owe you their time. That's their cost of having that job is that they have to spend time with you because you're represented by them. So at least do that. At least look it up to who they are, reach out to them, and let them know your thoughts.
Yeah, he's 100% right. They need to be educated. Like, we have this idea that our city officials know the code. They don't. I mean, some of the inspectors know the code, some of the supervisors know the code, but our city council members definitely don't know the code. They were finding us for a dumpster, and we went in there, and they prescribed us to do something to bring us into compliance that was directly against the municipal code that they had voted on like the year prior. And we had to pull their own code book out and say, hey, that would make common sense. Why'd you vote so we can't do that? You know, they're just people that cared about their communities, that feel a duty to their constituents. They're not attorneys. Just educate them. Educate them kindly, graciously, and I think we win.
If all they hear is from the bad, like you said, what else do they know?
They don't. Yeah, they don't know anything.
Exactly.
They don't know anything. And especially when these, you know, the older group, I just think that they retire and they get bored. And and they stop having reasons to see people and meet people. And so they create a purpose for themselves, which is no different than any of us do. We all create our own purpose. But their purpose is based on their needs and their view of the world, which is really a lot different than the view of a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old that's still in the rat race trying to make money for their family. Like, what you got to make people understand is, okay, let me not be so extreme for a second. Let me give you some honestly good advice. When you talk to these people who have the very not my backyard mentality, so easy, I'm always the one guilty of it. It's easy to say, look, you don't know what you're talking about. The data doesn't support that. You're stupid. You know, why are you voting on a legislation that you're not even going to be alive to see in 5 years? You know, it's easy to be that way. But the fact of the matter is, like, if you make an effort and you don't rise to their bait, even if they're inflammatory first, and you say, look, I understand what your concern is. Like, I don't want to see the neighborhood turned into a renter cast either, right? I want homeowners in this neighborhood. We all do. That's good for communities. But let me ask you this. Do you really think somebody's going to spend $100,000 in this neighborhood to put an ADU in the back and just let it go to crap? Like, do you think that they want a sex offender living in their backyard? Like, no, I don't want that. Do they want that? I mean, thankfully, this neighborhood doesn't have, you know, those sorts of people in it, right? It's like you almost force them to like call their neighbors heathens or admit that, like, oh, actually we're always so afraid about the worst case scenario, which really doesn't come true a whole lot. Somebody invests money to put something in their backyard, they're gonna keep it up. In a neighborhood of $200,000 houses, people don't have $100,000 to throw away. You know, this is actually a good note for home ownership because it forces people to put down further roots. So I guess that's my note of good advice is, like, even the not my backyard crowd, like, I want to say their heart is in the right place. They're just, I don't know. I don't know if they're bored, uneducated, but compassion will get you a lot. That's my experience. Yes, sir.
Random question since we were talking about it. Was the new Landlord Tenant Act actually signed? I was just on the legislator page. It still has 2019.
I haven't heard anything about this. This is new news to me, so I'm going to research it.
I don't think so. Title 41 is still 2019.
Because they were trying to put all sorts of stuff into that. They were trying to extend eviction timelines. They were trying to extend notice requirements. They were trying to do a whole bunch of stuff, which, by the way, that's another thing that we're not active enough on. We're going to let our legislation get stolen right under our nose.
There's a new bill out for mold remediation. I think it's for multifamily, more than it is single family.
Oh, yes, I've seen this.
But the tenants have a lot of power over the landlord, leverage, that fees, fines, all kinds of stuff. So it's a no-go if we say something. If we don't, then you're leaving it up to somebody else to determine how you deal with your tenants.
Yeah, that mold bill is particularly troublesome because...
Brian Dingman, I think, is a rep that introduced it, I think, out of Norman. Maybe.
And they just need to hear common sense. Like, Your Honor, whose job is it to maintain their living space? Do I come in and vacuum their floors? I mean, where does this end? Like, mold is everywhere. Pull up the CDC description. It's like 99.9% of mold is not harmful to you and 80% of it's black. So why are we always screaming about mold? Like, grab a wet washcloth, wipe it the fuck up.
Yeah, if you're cleaning your bathroom periodically, you'll never see mold in it.
Exactly.
And the problem with it is, like, how do I prove the timeline? So they give us like 72 hours, I think, on that before we got fines or blah, blah, blah. And so a tenant says that there's 72 hours, but we know we don't enforce that. We know it because it's the same way the HAP contracts with OFA say that they have to provide a landlord written notice before they request an inspection from Section 8. Do they ever verify that they gave us written notice? Like, all of these things, like if you've ever ended up in landlord-tenant court, they say, oh, you've got to send your landlord notice via certified mail to make sure he knew about the problem. That's the law. It's not an opinion, that's the law. Do I ever see a judge throw a case out because they didn't give me a certified mail receipt? Or does the judge say, well, how long did you know, sir? And I say, hey, Your Honor, I don't want to submit another judiciary complaint, but here's the law, and it's not your place to provide legal advice. You know how that goes, is what I'm saying. Is a tenant says, oh, well, the mold's been here for 3 weeks, and he didn't do anything about it, and he knew. There's no burden of proof.
So, and that particular law is in my head, because I just had a tenant that I didn't renew the lease. She insisted there was mold in the kitchen, there were slugs climbing up, it was so horrible. It just, the management company told me all this. I get in to clean the place up when she's gone, there's no mold anywhere. But we found 50 hypodermic needles on the floor. Okay, so she's tripping her ass off. So, but had she reported that, I'd have $1,000 check out there to somebody, having to try to recover my money and prove that all this was. So it's just a good example of how to get out of control easily if we're not paying attention.
Yeah, at least 1 of 3 of our maintenance calls are not an issue at all when we arrive.
Are we allowed to give like a quick notice? I mean, you got mold in there, you gotta go, rather than get a fine or,
No. I mean, maybe. But this is what people don't understand. There's an intersection between what the law says and what a judge will do. And a judge just isn't going to kick somebody out of their house for something small. I mean, the issues I'm having have to be so severe for me to try to kick somebody out for a lease violation, because I walk into that court and I don't know what the answer is going to be. And if the answer is no, your nightmare tenant just became extremely emboldened. So, yeah, no, I mean, the answer is kind of always yes. You shoot yourself in the foot. Regardless of what the law says, you can get a tenant out for a bona fide emergency situation. Okay, you can, but to do that, you're going to put a lot of eyes on yourself. You're going to get the city involved in your business. You're probably going to get the fire marshal involved in your business. You just don't want to do that. So that's my experience, at least. Good. You guys done with me?
Never.
Just to avoid the 3 hours. Estella Hernandez, who is James Langford's assistant in some way. So got her card at Brian Long swearing in ceremony. Emailed her about an issue I was having. City inspectors required that I rip up my original driveway just because I was adding 1 car parking spot to the side so that I could comply with ADA, flat spot wheelchair compliance.
Yeah.
And let her know that they cost me an extra $2,000 and city inspector, the whole thing. I had already emailed the House District Representative about it, but he was more concerned about the people around the corner that didn't seem to have to do what they were requiring me to do. He wanted everybody to have this ADA compliance, and I'm trying to get away from it. Right? So
Well, at least she's not a hypocrite.
Right.
I mean,
Seriously, so anyway, I sent her some messages about that and trying to see if the federal government is actually strong-arming municipalities requiring this, or is this just our city inspectors seeing this code?
ADA is federal, my friend. And the fact is a lot of the municipalities that are easiest to work in just choose not to apply it, but they don't really have the authority to not apply it. They're not in compliance.
So this is the right potential avenue to go to see if we can get on the city.
Well, there are exceptions to the ADA. Like, as far as I know, you shouldn't be required to make a personal residence accessible. I don't know exactly what was going on.
Well. So the city is potentially wrong here, but
Look, the city's wrong all the time, but you don't read the code book. That's kind of my love note to you guys in this sermon is we hold ourselves out to be the experts, but we haven't read the book. I have fought with the city a dozen times, and I've won like 10 of them because I know the code. Or if I don't know the code and they tell me no, my automatic assumption is they're wrong, and then I go read the applicable code standard and say, okay, I see why you see that, but here's how I read the code. And a lot of times the chief building inspector gets to be the tie-breaking vote on that, but if you call him 13 times in a day and he doesn't care that much, he just wants you to go away.
So here's the caveat with my situation. The contractor, he was all scared to do what I told him to do. I said, don't pour the freaking concrete. Do not rip up my original driveway. Stop this whole thing. I'm fighting this deal. And then I'm communicating through my neighbor who's Spanish speaking, and she's communicating to the contractor Spanish speaker. And then I open my camera, and he's ripping up my original driveway to just finish the job because he's scared he's going to get his license, blah, 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 if he doesn't finish the job the way the inspector tells him to do it.
Okay, you were today years old when you learned that a lot of contractors pretend that they don't understand you specifically so they can do what they want to do. He knew what you wanted. He didn't care.
I paid him squat.
Yeah.
And then I caved and paid him $1,000. He wanted $2,000. I paid him $1,000, whatever. He got it done. But I was trying. To.
Read the code book and make friends with people. I mean, like, Troy is back here. He has helped me like 6 times navigate stuff with the city of Oklahoma City. Be nice to people and read the code book. That's your love letter. Because the code book says something, okay? And very rarely is it actually like, a lot of times it's ambiguous. Like an example is like we were trying to put together an ADA bathroom, and in the faucet, the center point of the faucet had to be like 9 inches from the wall and no less than like 36 or something inches from the toilet, okay? There was no way to do it, and I was really frustrated because Oklahoma City approved my building plans, approved my plumbing plans, approved my stuff, and then came out here and basically said, no, you can't do this, and it's not possible, even though we passed all these inspections to this point. And so what we did, though, is it never said anything about where the sink had to be. Just said where the faucet had to be. So we went and bought this like weird sink from South Korea that's like to the corner and has the faucet all the way on this side pointing this way. So it's a pain in the ass, but it got it done. So read the code book. I mean, that's really what you got to do. Over and over and over again, because what does it mean? You guys might read the same paragraph and get separate things out of it. And my argument is going to be, and I think it's a winning argument, is that if there's a discussion about the code book, it should be decided in favor of me by grace, unless you can show me that there is a pressing and imminent threat to safety. That's kind of their trump card, life and safety. But how is somebody going to argue that the faucet facing to the right is... No, sorry, Your Honor, it doesn't say which direction the faucet has to face. I can face it towards the wall. It's not common sense, but it doesn't say that I can't. So, good for thought. All right, guys, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you. Sorry I moved so much. I saw you trying to track me.
I knew you were going to get your pivot today.
It happens.
All right, we're over.